So some house rules. Please feel free to recline in your seats. Yes, please. Please feel free to make the most of the facilities. Yes, and thank you all so much for attending this talk as opposed to any of the others. I think I heard somebody as they came in through the door there say, "Well, anything except C#," and that's the spirit we want to encourage. So so thank you for attending our talk. Yep.
C# is the best language in the world.
Meh. Yep. Right, so this talk is entitled The Heat Death of Enterprise IT. First time we have ever given this talk, so we're really, really interested to see how it goes.
Premiere at the cinema, of course.
Premiere at the cinema, exactly. Yeah. So my name's Garth Gilmour. I am the head of learning, so I'm the senior trainer at Instil Software in Belfast. Senior trainer is Gaelic for person who begs clients for money, so that's my role. I do more sales than anybody else in the team. And for the purposes of this talk, I am Mr. Bad News. Yeah, you will have somebody else talking to you, and I'm required to let him do an intro, so off you go, Eamon.
Yes. I'm Eamon. For the purpose of this talk, I am Mr. Good News. I'm another trainer at Instil, sort of coach, mentor, dev, whatever. Titles are super important, aren't they, Garth?
Oh,
yes,
yeah,
yes. Titles
absolutely.
are super important.
They really count.
But for the purpose of this talk is I'm going to try and make you slightly less depressed and counter some of Garth's arguments.
Very good. Excellent. So I do an awful lot of public speaking. I've been doing training and consultancy for over 20 years now, and there are 3 reasons why I do a talk. Yeah. Number 1, I am very enthusiastic or optimistic about a technology. Number 2, somebody has paid me a lot of money to pretend I am very enthusiastic or optimistic about a technology. And then reason number 3, I'm genuinely worried, okay? And I'm doing the talk as a form of catharsis, yeah? So this is a number 3 talk. So for the duration of the talk, you folks are all my psychotherapists, so thank you very much for that. So this is a talk where I want to discuss something that I'm genuinely worried about, okay? So as I stand here in front of you, I feel burdened with inglorious purpose. And I have a worry, about where we are in the industry at the moment. And I was trying to find a metaphor, for the worry that I have. And I was sitting with my kids watching a science program, and they were talking about the heat death of the universe. And they defined this as a period of time where we are all so spread out, that no useful work can go on. And I kind of thought, that's it, that's the metaphor. So what I feel at the moment about the IT industry is that we are being pulled apart in various ways. And we could very easily reach a point where we are pulled too far apart for real work to occur. So that's what I'm going to try and convince you of in this talk. And Eamon is going to argue the other case and therefore be wrong. Yep. So I feel that there are 5 separate ways in which we are being pulled apart. Okay, so the first one, frameworks, is the obvious one, but there are 4 others I'd like to lead you through as well. Okay, and as I say, as we do each of these, Eamon will be giving you the counterpoint. Yeah. So let me start with number 1, probably the most obvious one, and that's to talk about frameworks. So one of the seed crystals, that started this idea in my head was I was with one of our largest clients in Ireland. I was with their HR manager. I was planning out their training for the next year, and they made the observation that there's no such thing as advanced developers, not anymore. So from the point of view of a senior HR manager at a company with about 500 software developers, there's no such thing as advanced developers. Okay, so I've been in the industry for 25 years, so I had the same thing in my head that I'm sure you have right now, where you're going, nonsense, something, maturity, something, coping skills, something, communication, resilience, wisdom, all these good things. Yeah, but the point of view of the HR manager was that they just saw everybody taking the same training, because the number of frameworks, the change, the churn in frameworks, the way the frameworks were evolving, so that beginner developers, intermediate developers, advanced developers, they were all taking the same training, so from the point of an HR manager, there really wasn't any point to streaming the developers at all. Okay. So let's just think about this for a minute. We were going to do this via a Q&A format and a raise of hands, but that's unfair to the people attending virtually. So let's just compress it a little bit. So could you name 5 frameworks for creating a web app? Of course you could, you know. Could you name 5 JVM frameworks for creating a web app? Of course you could, if you've got any familiarity with Java, you know. Could you name 5 Kotlin frameworks for creating a web app? Again, if you know Kotlin, absolutely yes, you could. Okay, so there's a goodly number of frameworks in that particular category. Part 2. Could you name 5 JavaScript frameworks? Could you name 500 JavaScript frameworks? Yeah. Can you name 5 frameworks for creating a single-page application? Well, there's a lot more than 5. Okay, so let's narrow our scale all the way down. Okay, can you name 5 frameworks for managing state within React? Okay, so again, if you're a React developer, I'm sure you could. Okay. Or one final little poll, one final little thought experiment. Could you name 5 cloud computing platforms? Yes, you know. Could you name 5 mechanisms for deploying to AWS? Oh dear God, yes. Okay, so we at Instil we asked our in-house AWS expert, how many mechanisms can you think up for deploying to AWS? I stopped counting at 12. He kept going past 30. You know, and at some point we sat him down and gave him a nice cup of Earl Grey tea, and he's feeling a lot better now. You know, so there are many mechanisms for deploying to AWS. Okay. So hopefully I've driven the point home with brick-like subtlety, you know, that we are drowning in frameworks, you know. And I can remember in the 2000s when it was more like a battle between titans. So it used to be that, you know, we used to say, okay, the solution is Java. What's your problem? You know, and then it was the solution is enterprise Java. What's your problem? You know, and then things got very, very competitive. You know, the solution is enterprise Java or .NET. What's your problem? Okay, so when it came to frameworks, it used to be like a battle between the titans, you know. But what it feels like to me at the moment is I was doing some work with a company in Boston, and we went out to lunch, and there was this big street filled with food trucks, you know, dozens and dozens of food trucks, all selling really tasty food, all the kind of food you can possibly imagine, but you were drowning in choice. You know, you just didn't know what to choose, and everybody was shouting and trying to get your attention, and you couldn't make up your mind what you wanted to have. Yeah, and I think that's why DevRel, developer relations, is suddenly a big thing. You know, has anybody seen that there's all these jobs now for developer relations, and it's a formal job title, and it's something that you don't have to be ashamed to go into? So I can stop calling myself a trainer, and I can start saying I'm in developer relations. You know, so it sounds good. Okay, so DevRel is now a big job title, and that's because companies need people to shout for their stuff, you know, to advocate for their products, their frameworks, their IDEs, their libraries, whatever it happens to be. Okay, so why this really worries me is that as the frameworks become more and more numerous, and as the ways of building the application spread more and more out, well then we get more and more spread apart. So any sufficiently disparate set of frameworks is indistinguishable from rolling your own, okay? As famously said by me right now, okay? Or to think of it another way, you know, whenever I started in the industry in 1995, you would go into a company and they would say, oh, you know, all we had was the C++ language and the standard template library of data structures and the networking library provided by the operating system. We had to do everything ourselves. It'll take you months to understand our design, you know. So I remember the terror, you know, of joining a new company and frantically trying to understand their architecture, you know, and being 6 weeks before I could contribute anything and so on. And then we had the age of frameworks, yay, okay, where there was reuse, you know, so you could take your knowledge of struts or ASP.NET, web controls or something like this, you know, back in the day, from one company to another, and you got reuse across employers and so on. So there was the age of frameworks, But at the moment, it feels very strongly like we're coming to the end of the age of frameworks. You know, when we're getting to the point where you join a company and they say, well, you'll know the names of the frameworks and they're all technically open source and you could have learned them before now, but you probably won't know this combination of frameworks. You won't know the way that we're plugging them together. You know, you'll have to learn this bridge code that we wrote or this little DSL or whatever. It will take you months to understand our design, okay? So the first way I feel that we're being pulled apart is just this massive proliferation of frameworks. You know, it seems that whenever we get to 2025, we'll arrive back in 1995. You know, welcome to the company. It will be months before you can do anything. Yeah. Eamon, you want to say something at this point, I'm sure. Yeah.
So you're not totally wrong. You just need to chill out a little bit, I think. So, I mean, I'm not a big fan of the waste in our industry. I'm not a big fan of reinventing the wheel, which we just seem to love doing and going and chasing the shiny thing like a dog chasing after a car. But it's not all spin. You know, some of the frameworks are adding real value. They're solving real problems. The reason they exist is because they're solving real problems. So like just taking some of the ones that we talked about there, you know, think about writing your own React. Think about writing your own Spring framework. Think about writing Jetpack. And not even like the whole thing because, well, React's pretty small, but, you know, something like Spring is huge. Not even the whole thing, just the bits that you use. These things are massive, massive undertakings. And then when we have a big community of people using them, they're battle tested, you know? Like if we look at even just picking React again and look at some of the GitHub numbers, you know, we have over 14,000 commits. That's an awful lot of work. That's an awful lot of work goes into that framework. We have over 1,500 contributors. That's a lot of people looking at that code, making sure that it's right. Used by 7.9 million. That is a battle-tested framework where the bugs have been ironed out and the best patterns are sort of evolving and coming to the fore. 96 releases. So these things, you know, there is a difference between writing your own because we've got a big community behind this, a lot of development that goes inside this, okay? The things we're building now are probably more complex as well. Again, we're getting new frameworks because we're doing new things. Our industry and the products that we produce and the services we produce are constantly evolving. This is not Uber. This is a local taxi firm in Belfast. We're a pretty small city, as cities go, but this is our local taxi firm. And instead of like whenever I was at university, you'd ring up a taxi and you'd stand out in the cold until it came or if it came. I can see all of the cars. I can book it. I can book it to the company account. I can do all of these things. Food apps, I can sit and I can see all the local food places and order from the comfort of my sofa while watching Star Trek as I was doing last night. And then this is a recent Minecraft. Anybody, what was it called? Minecraft Con or Minecon? Was anybody roped into watching that? My kids were obsessed or are obsessed with Minecraft, so they made me watch this not that long ago. And there was a vote on Twitter for the next mob, which I guess is like a character in Minecraft. I don't know. I'm too old. But within like a minute or two, there was over 1 million votes. And this is to pick the next character in a kid's computer game. So the systems we're building now are more complex, so we need these kinds of things to build it out. There's also like some other positives other than just productivity and innovation and building things. There are some economies of scale. You know, think about, I mean, some people have on-prem servers, but a lot of people have migrated to the cloud. Think about everyone having their own data center or everyone sharing a data center. Think about everyone spinning up VMs versus everyone having serverless. There's a lot more economies of scale just in terms of like environmental impact and things like that as well. Because although these data centers are massive, you know, users of power, you know, having thousands of these things is still worse. So when we're coupling ourselves to framework, there is some cost there. There are some cons for sure. Reinventing the wheel and doing the same thing again in a different way and expecting a different result, that is definitely something we don't want to do. But we need to weigh up the pros and the cons, and it's not all cons, I would say.
Good. Yes. So thank you very much for that, Eamon. That was definitely a contribution. So I'll take that all under advisement. Yeah. So category number 2 in the ways that we're being pulled apart is thinking. Okay. So I don't know about you, but whenever I was being trained as a developer, I was taught that thinking was a good idea, and as developers, we were knowledge workers and we were being paid to think deeply about problems and come up with creative solutions. And this was an intrinsic part of our job, and you didn't want to interrupt a developer when they were busy. So I try very hard to build up my underlying skills. I was a late entry into the IT industry, so I get imposter syndrome. I get imposter syndrome hard. So at home, I have a shelf of shame, of books I should have read but haven't read yet. Yeah. Does anybody else have a shelf of shame? Yay! Good, good. I am amongst my people. Good. Yes. So
it's a folder of shame now because they're all digital. So
yeah, yeah. I have a Kindle of shame. Yes. Yeah. So I have a shelf of shame at home, and I cannot claim to have read all of these. These are books from my shelf of shame. Shelf of shame. Yeah. Try saying that 10 times fast. But every so often I take one of these books down and I read a couple of chapters and I make some notes and so on, and I feel better within myself, and I put the book up on the slightly less shameful shelf, So a lot of us do the same thing, and this has always been intrinsic to the idea of being a software developer, that you are doing hard work where you need to think deeply, okay? So if you haven't read The Mythical Man Month, you really should. It's the book that marks the beginning of software engineering as a profession, and in its own right. And in the Mythical Man Month book, there was this idea of the surgical team metaphor, where you would have a senior developer, and the senior developer would have a Padawan, an understudy, who would be helping the senior developer, and then they in turn would be supported by technical writers and UI designers and testers and all this kind of thing. So in the same way that in an operating theatre, you would have the senior surgeon supported by the junior surgeon, supported by the nursing staff and so on. So the idea was to give the senior developer / surgeon as much time as he or she needed to do really deep thinking and deep working and learning and so on. So I had always taken this as being uncontroversial, in our industry. But then earlier this year, one of these cartoons went round. As you know, there's a bunch of cartoons like this. I can't remember which one it was. And, any time I've seen one of these shared, it's always been very uncontroversial. Ha ha ha, move on, okay? But what happened in this case is it generated an awful lot of controversy, and people were saying, how dare developers think that, they're unique in being the people who do this deep thought, and how dare developers have the arrogance to think that they should be able to, lock off their minds for hours or days at a time and do this, that's how we should not be working in an agile team, etc., 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 and not to name names, but senior people in our industry, people I like and strongly respect, were taking that side of the argument, so this really gave me pause, this made me think, and it brought me back to some interesting feedback that we got just before the pandemic, so as Eamonn was saying, we work for the services side of the business, we do training and consultancy and so on, we get an awful lot of feedback, we take it very seriously, and some of the feedback that we'd been getting was stop recommending books. Okay, because we got told multiple times modern developers don't read books. Okay, so please stop recommending books. And we were like, okay, the customer's always right, but we'll think about that one, And then the second one was, we try and write a lot of blogs. We have the Medium account and there's the corporate blog, and we do things on DZone and InfoQ and so on. And we were saying, look, your blogs are great, but they're too wordy. Too theoretical. There's this big gap between the title and the first block of code that you fill with words. Stop doing that. So less words between the title and the code, please. Stop introducing things. Stop going into the theory and giving the background so much and so on. So I think this kind of reflects the fact that as developers, we're getting pulled away from where we started out, and we're kind of in an era of Magpie development, where we look things up in Stack Overflow and you put it on and so on. So GitHub Copilot, seems to be the almost perfect illustration of this. Brilliant tool for doing the Magpie style of development, But is this really what we want to be doing, as developers? Yeah. And it seems to have reached the stage where it's a bad idea to learn anything deeply. Okay, you can find any number of tweets like this with people saying, look, in the modern serverless world, the tools are being fired at you, new services are being launched all the time, new patterns, new things, like, not to pick on AWS, it's just the one I know best, you know, see, but the ADS CDK, and then improvements to the CDK, and then CDK patterns and all this kind of thing. So don't wait, you know, don't try and learn the current shiny thing deeply. New shiny thing coming soon. You know, so don't take the time to learn the current thing, you know, fully and in depth. It's a waste of your time. The new thing will be along soon. You know, so we're actively encouraging Magpie development because we can do amazing things with Magpie development. We had a team at Instil who rolled out a very, very successful project, and they did a big demo to the rest of the company about the underlying code base, and they did most of it in YAML, you know, at the end of the day. And one of the developers made this quote, which I immediately noted down and said, I'm going to use that in a talk. And they said, I'm not sure I want you to do that. And I said, too bad. So you know, the quote was, this is all great, yeah, but I will miss coding. Yeah. And this seems to be what you would expect in an industry where you're transitioning from being craftspeople to being mechanics, you know, because I'm old enough to remember my father's generation. My father had friends who rebuilt their car engines from scratch every year and so on. And whenever you're a craftsperson, you're designing the system, or you have to understand the whole system, and you have to adapt like a car part from a different manufacturer and lathe it down and get it to the stage where it can be used in somebody else's engine or whatever. Whereas, you know, a modern car mechanic, they plug in the diagnostic tool to the engine and they go, that part broken, you know, and we replace that part, you know. So it seems to me that we're very much making the transition from the top category to the bottom category, you know. So I think we're being pulled away from where we started with the Mythical Man Month, and we've got to ask ourselves a question, you know, and the question is it just time to stop knowing? Okay. So, Eamonn, you wanted to say something?
Yes. You're sort of here, and I need you about here. Lower your blood pressure. So you're not totally wrong. I think you just need to like take a step back. So every generation, I think, I sort of have to keep catching myself and making sure that I'm like not turning into my father. You know, every generation can claim authenticity, and we did it right. When we did programming, you know, programmers were programmers. So, you know, it's maybe just an evolution. They're maybe doing different things. So like even take like medicine, where you know, medicine in the olden days, it's crazy. Let's just lop off a leg and throw leeches at it. Now we have incredible tools, incredibly complex systems. Surgeries last hours upon hours. You have whole teams in there with different people doing different things. That's probably still a better place to be. It is a different kind of medicine, but it is probably a better kind of medicine. So, you know, if we take like the modern developer and you go back, you know, a few years, well, that slightly older developer might say, you know, you're just sticking AWS services together to build an app. I mean, are you really thinking? You know, if you're not writing it in Java, you know, are you really thinking? But then you go back a few more years and the person says, wait a minute, you're using a managed language? If you're not thinking about memory layouts and pointers and managing your own memory, I mean, are you really thinking? But then you go back a little bit further, it's like, whoa. You're using a compiler. How do you get any sort of efficiency with those general purpose tools? If you're not writing it all in assembly, then, you know, are you really thinking? But then you go back further again, it's like, wait a minute, you're using standard hardware? Why are you not building your own circuits? That's the only way to get efficiency. So, you know, every generation could say that, you know, when we did it right. Or maybe it's just different. Maybe it's an evolution, and maybe we're still solving problems. So I think what we're doing is we're solving different problems, and we're solving problems differently. But I don't think that it's actually a bad thing. You know, the frameworks, the tools, the hardware today, I think we can be more productive in our industry today than we could at any time before. The information is there, the tools are there. So much of it is free. It's brilliant. So the work that we're doing is still highly skilled. We still have to think logically. We still have to do problem solving. We're still going to get paid for it, you know, which is good. But it's maybe just different kinds of work, you know. In terms of the blog posts and the books, there are tons of books out there that are awful. They're really just a waste of paper, to be honest with you. There's lots of blog posts that, again, are very, very wordy. We didn't write any of them. The other people wrote them. Ours are all solid gold. But there is some nugget of truth there in terms of that there is a lot of reinvention in our industry, which is waste, which I'm not a big fan of. But once you get to a certain competency level, you can very quickly take the skills that you have, the knowledge and experience that you've gained, to learn the next thing very rapidly. So although it is a new framework, you can learn it very rapidly. So you can sort of cut straight to the diamond and sort of avoid all the crud. But then it depends on where you're jumping on this train. So if you're beginning in the industry, you need those words, you need that help. So you just need to pitch it at different people. And you know, it's sort of like the kind of thing is like, do we need all of the detail? I was able to, although there's a lot of roadworks at the conference, but I was able to find my way to the conference using Google Maps. I didn't have to get out my sextant and have a clear night to look at the stars. So things evolve, things become easier. Then I concentrate more on, okay, what am I going to do when I get to the conference? Not so much as like, okay, where are the stars? So we just think about different things, you know. In terms of the miscoding, that is definitely something. I mean, I love coding. That's sort of my passion. I love languages and I love problem solving. That's the kind of work that I'm going to always want to do, and sort of explaining it to other people. So I'm going to steer my career to the jobs that require that. There will be jobs where it will be only, you know, YAML and these sorts of things. I'll choose not to do those kinds of jobs. And we're in sort of a lucky place that we actually have those options. Lots of people don't have those options. So I'm incredibly grateful every day that I'm in this industry where I do have those options. And I think we always will have a requirement for the kinds of work that I enjoy. So just find something that you're passionate about, find something that you love doing, and then just go out and do it. But I don't also want to just do busy work. I don't want to do things that I know that there's a better way. You know, if there's a way to do a 5-line YAML file or spend a week coding in C, I'm going to go for the 5-line YAML file. But I'm going to find work where you can't solve it with YAML, and that I'm going to enjoy doing that problem solving, and after Eric's talk today, learning Rust, you know.
Very good, very good. Sorry there, folks. There was a buzzing in my ear, but it seems to have stopped, and that's a good thing. Right. So moving on to category number 3, which I've called full stack. I should maybe have called it multi-dimensional full stack. Okay. So what are we as modern developers? You know, well, are we programmers? You know, do we write some code? Well, yeah, sort of, you know, but as we just were discussing in the previous point, and you can find any number of tweets reinforcing this fact, that, you know, at the moment, whenever I was a programmer, it was more about business logic and trying to understand the needs of the customer. Remember we did that, you know? But at the moment, there's, you know, this huge focus on Kubernetes, or pick your deployment mechanism of choice, you know? So we seem to be more DevOps people than we are programmers, you know? So what is in the toolbox? What is in the skill set of the modern developer? You know, are we programmers? Well, there'll be a bit of that, you know, but there's going to be a lot of DevOps, yeah. And yet, if we go out, DDD is in the ascendant. And this is a really good thing, because my first degree was in philosophy, so I'm a philosopher by training. I love DDD. I talk about it all the time. It's absolutely amazing. But DDD is a really deep thing. It has very deep philosophical underpinnings. There are some very simple ideas that drive it, but to do it, and to do it right, is a complex, hard, you know, difficult skill set to master. So these are, you know, these are all good resources in DDD. So, you know, as a modern developer, I'm expected to be a programmer. Good, know how to do that. You know, I'm expected to be able to do all of this DevOps stuff. You know, I'm expected to be a business analyst and be an expert in DDD as well. And yet, yeah. So I don't know if you've noticed, raise your hand if you think there are less testers around than there used to be, you know? Yeah. I do remember there being more testers about, you know? So whenever I started in the industry, there were big testing teams and QA departments, and testing was recognized as a separate skill, because, you know, we have the famous agile testing quadrants diagram, and this brings across the point really well that there are many different dimensions to testing, you know, and there's this quadrant here in the bottom left where we're doing our unit and integration testing, and we all really understand that as developers. But then we've got the non-functional testing, the performance, the reliability, the supportability, the usability, the A/B testing, the customer workshops, all this kind of thing. And again, this is a specialist skill. You know, you do not inherently know this. You have to go out and learn all of this stuff, you know. So what is the modern developer? Bit of programming, awful lot of DevOps, but also a business analyst, also knowing DDD, also being a QA, also an expert in non-functional testing and running usability workshops and A/B testing and stress testing and all this kind of stuff. And also, but nice quote from Alan Holub, which I absolutely agree with. I do not disagree with this quote in any way, shape, or form. But as modern developers, we're producing web apps which are universally accessible and so on. So we have to worry about security. Okay. So who here can run through the OWASP top 10 off the top of their head? I'm lying. But as modern developers, we are expected to know and understand the security exploits that could be used against our stuff. And no matter the most humble web app that you're writing, you should always be thinking, okay, this feature works, but how could somebody attack this feature? What would be the ways in if somebody wasn't playing by the rules? How could this UI be corrupted? How could this API be circumvented, and so on? So we're supposed to be talking about all of that stuff as well. Okay, so we know a little bit about coding, but we're also DevOps. We also do business analysis. We're also QA people, and we're also experts in penetration testing and security exploits and so on. And also, you may have heard that 80% of new products fail. Okay. So as an industry, we've been doing a lot of lifting and shifting. We move things to the web, we move things to mobile, we move things to the cloud. I know that there haven't been that many new platforms for a while. So clients are asking for engaging products. Can you believe that? So they actually want software that's usable and meets their requirements and draws them in and gives them what they need and so on. Okay, so suddenly product management is a really, really important thing. So as developers, we're a small part of a much bigger product management workflow. We're supposed to be working in this double diamond thing, and so on. So again, who's been told that product management is a real and valuable part of their job, whereas it wouldn't have been previously? Who's had that pitch? A few hands going up. So here we are here. And the only thing that stopped me was I ran out of space on the slide and also the time's going down. Okay. So as a modern developer, we do a bit of programming. It's in there somewhere, but we also do DevOps. We also do business analysis. We also do QA. We're also experts in security, allegedly, and we're all product people now. Okay. That's an awful lot to ask somebody in their first year out of college. Okay. So I can see how somebody with a decade or two's experience can, take this heavy burden on his or her shoulders. But for some of the graduates, for example, that we would run training academies for, this is an awful lot to be going on with, Or am I wrong?
Yes, I think after this talk, I'm going to give you a hug. I think you need it. So you're not totally wrong, but again, I think you need to chill out a little bit. So I think we should have an holistic view. I mean, I remember when people have narrow focus, this concept of full vertical slices has some really good advantages because communication's hard and things are missed. And if people have like a narrow blinkered view on this is my world and everyone else, that's their problems, that leads to problems too. So, testing, for example, I think it's good that developers have to have a test mentality. It's hard to be like a really good QA. I wouldn't get rid of the discipline altogether, but I think that we have to take some of that responsibility and really think about, going outside of the happy path when we're building our systems. We also should be maintaining those tests. So, the bad old days of, it works on my machine and you just throw it over the wall and then, okay, you raise a bug and you bring that back. And it's just an awful lot of waste there. In terms of UI design and product, again, these are the kinds of awesome applications that I grew up with. We need to have a bit of a think about usability. Developers shouldn't be totally blinkered and say, well, it works. The user's wrong. You're holding it wrong. That's not a good answer either. And then in terms of security, again, security is a very specialist skill. It's something I have total imposter syndrome over. You're not going to be as good at security as a proper, security expert. But we should have some awareness. So again, I was just thinking about bad practices and I Googled and this was the question that came up, is it safe to store passwords in GitHub? This is asked enough. that this is like a Google result. No, don't do that. So we have to have some awareness. In terms of how many hats you wear, some of that will be company culture, some of that will be just financial constraints, and if you're in a small company with very little bandwidth and very little resources, you might have to wear all hats to a large degree. But in a lot of industries, you just have to wear it a little bit. You have to have some awareness, but there'll still be specialisms in our industry. There are still specialists in our industry. So it's not that we have to do all of these and there's only like one kind of employee in the business, but we have to have some awareness. So yeah, chill, breathe. It's okay.
Yeah, very interesting, Piffle. Anyway, so number 4, the penultimate one. Yeah. So this is one that I think reinforces all the earlier ones. Okay. So this is the issue of ethics. Okay. So you may remember, but books like this back in the 80s or 90s, where they talked about software developers from the perspective of pity, So we might be rich, we might be successful, but we were poor little dweebs, So, but definitely we weren't evil, So software developers as a profession, as an industry, as a culture, they weren't necessarily evil people. Okay, that seems to have changed a little bit. Okay, so if you keep your eye on the news headlines, you can see that software developers aren't necessarily portrayed as nice people these days. Okay. So, the way that we are regarded, in modern society has definitely changed. And this is an article I was recommended on Medium. I really encourage you to read it and so on. And it was talking about how, giving your all to work can just suck away your soul, and you shouldn't be committing so much time to your working life. And but as developers, this is something that we're encouraged to do because we're told, that it's our professional responsibility to keep up with the latest trends and learn the latest technologies. And as you say, go out and learn Rust or Elm or whatever in our spare time and be ready for the next revolution and future-proof your career, all this kinds of stuff. Okay, and it's a lot easier to do that if you feel that the products you're producing are doing good, to society as a whole. Okay, but if you believe that you're working for a social media company that is eroding democracy and driving us towards some kind of, hideous William Gibson type future, that's not a good thing. That's going to cause issues. So that would be another way in which we're currently being pulled apart internally, or our souls are being blackened. Yeah. So you'll have fun with that one.
Yeah. So yeah, running theme here. You need to be more like the dude. Have a white Russian. So like every industry now is every company is an IT company. Computers are everywhere. So we're going to be at the good, the bad, and the ugly. So here's like some examples, like Wikipedia. I use Wikipedia pretty much every day in my professional life and my personal life. When they send me little emails and say, can we have some money, please? I say, yes, money well spent, because just humanity's knowledge available at your fingertips for free. It's awesome. Then we have slightly more concerning things like Cambridge Analytica. Let's steal all people's information from Facebook and then use it for nefarious political gains. And then unabashedly amoral, Ashley Madison here. Life is short, have an affair. This is okay. You're maybe questionable ethics there, but we are everywhere. So of course IT is going to be there. But I don't feel responsible or guilty the fact that Ashley Madison or Cambridge Analytica existed. There's lots of good being done with computers as well. So I don't take all of that shame, all of that burden and guilt onto my own shoulders. What I would say though is that maybe as an industry, we're doing very well as an industry, quite a lucrative industry. We touch everything in the world. So we have the reach, we have the power, we have the capability. So maybe we should hold ourselves to higher standards. Maybe we should strive to be better than what other people are doing. I mean, other industries, you have the tobacco industry, you have the oil industry. I mean, I'm not going to name companies because I don't want to get sued. But if you go back in, through history, you've got murder and cover-ups and embezzlement and all of these things. These go on in these other industries. So we can't feel shame that evil exists in the world. But maybe we do have the capabilities to do better. So that would be the only thing that I would say is that we can do better than other companies. But I don't take all of the guilt.
So This is where the talk would normally have ended, okay, in the first draft. But we were a bit worried, about how this talk might be received. So we delivered it a couple of times internally, to see what feedback we would get. And the feedback was surprisingly positive, So people came to us and said, yes, we acknowledge these things, these things worry us. But the thing that you've forgotten is we're worried about a lot of other things as well. Here are other things we're worried about. Can you put those in the talk? And we were like, yeah, sure, we can do that, So the final section is extra anxieties, that were suggested to us by reviewers of the beta of this talk. Okay, so the first anxiety that was given to us was people said, look, we're an agile team. And we're expected to do everything for ourselves, okay? So the team is expected to be its own manager. The team is expected to be its own coach. The team is expected to be its own therapist, yeah? In the sense that as an agile team, we self-organize, we self-educate, we coach one another. Crucially, we resolve our own disagreements, But there's a reason why project management is a specialized skill that you go off and learn. There's a reason why, you're not encouraged to be an amateur psychotherapist. You have to do a certain amount of training and qualifications there and so on. Again, these are not things that the average person, let alone the average developer, is going to be intrinsically good at.
But did you not hear what I said? Wikipedia. Wikipedia is there. 5 minutes.
Yes. What is a narcissist? Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, okay. Yeah. So, yeah.
Dunning-Kruger.
Yeah. Yeah. So, we're expected to be able to manage all of this. Okay. So this was the first extra anxiety that we were given. Extra anxiety number 2 was just the feeling that things are too good, okay? I don't know about you folks, but, in Ireland, we have many, many more companies setting up. They're all doing incredible work. They are fighting to recruit developers. Salaries are going through the roof. On the one hand, it's a glorious time to be a developer, okay? But I can remember a very similar time. It was called the dot-com boom, okay? So who was there for those days? Who remember? Yeah. So you remember the wonderful time where management was coming up to you and going, is the coffee machine okay? The one we got last week, we can buy a new one. Are you happy with your remuneration package and everything good? And how's the gym? And is the masseuse and the weights coach and everything, is it all working out for you? And I remember that time, and I remember what happened 3 months after that. So there is a feeling that there is a bubble, and we're on the surface of the bubble, and the bubble might go pop. Okay, and I remember last time round, nobody saw when the bubble was going to burst. Everything was brilliant until it wasn't. So again, some of the reviewers of this talk, they were saying it feels like the bubble has expanded to maximum capacity, and we're worried about that. And then anxiety number 3, this is the only one in the entire talk that I don't share, okay? But I've actually had people mention it at this conference, just talking to people. People were talking about no code and low code and all this kind of thing. And is this going to take our jobs? So will there be a new generation of maybe serverless-based tools for quickly creating applications, and they will make us as developers redundant, okay? So I don't personally believe this, because I've seen this happen every 10 years. Every 10 years a vendor or a bunch of vendors come out and they say, look, there's magic tool, and in the magic tool you draw some kind of flow chart and you drag and drop on the blocks, and then you get a complete application whenever you push the magic red button. So you don't need developers at all. You just need business analysts who can drag and drop, and then you say, well, what happens if we need to add a new special block to the IDE? Oh, well, suppose you need a developer for that, So I don't necessarily believe in this. This is the one anxiety I don't have, But it's certainly bothering a lot of developers that I know, So that's our finest category, the bag of miscellaneous anxieties. So, Eamon, if you want to comment on those.
Yeah. So I've reused the same Big Lebowski picture, because you should have got it by now. About the bubble, not a fortune teller. Not sure what's going to happen there. Really difficult to make a call on that one. About teams, I personally think we're in a much better place now. I think, we have a concept of, succeeding or failing as a unit, as a team. I'm not saying all companies are like this, but generally speaking, high functioning ones are. We're more aware of, and we're more supportive of, like, mental health. We try to sort of make sure that people are comfortable and happy, and we're generally, I would say, more understanding in our industry. You know, we realize, especially in the last 20 months, we realize the importance of work-life balance. And again, like I can't speak for every company, but from the company that I work for, when COVID hit, you know, like our boss said, you know, work from home, but you know, if you need to take the kids out for a longer lunch, or you need to go and walk the dog, or you need to do anything like that, you know, just try your best to make up the time, no pressure. How lucky are we that we're in that sort of industry? Lots of my friends are in jobs that you do not have those sort of options. So you have to be incredibly grateful. And I would say that that's the kind of way I want to work. You know, I think that that's a better place to be. I remember the bad old days where, you know, it's like working late on a Friday and the head of engineering goes past and he's like, haha, fantastic. It's good to see my team here on a Friday. And I'm like, why? Everyone else left at 1 o'clock. Why, you know, that's not what we should be aiming for, is to have butts on seats. So I think we're in a better place, to be honest, in terms of teams. I think we have to be grateful for where we are. I think we just need to breathe. It's okay. It's okay.
Yeah. So, in conclusion, these are the different dimensions of overload. You know, these are the ways that I believe we are being pulled apart. And as I say, this isn't hollow rhetoric because I wasn't being paid enough. You know, this is stuff that genuinely worries and concerns me, you know, right now. So I'm worried about the proliferation of frameworks. You know, I'm worried about the way deep thought is being deprecated. I'm worried about it now seems to be the developer's responsibility to do everything. I'm concerned that we are now the baddies, you know, and the developers I work with have a whole other supplementary basket of anxieties that makes me feel better about myself, you know, so that's a good thing. So these are the different dimensions of overload. Yeah. So, I mean, to summarize, I've been in the industry for 20 to 25 years. I've spent the majority of that as a consultant. I've been in and out of more companies that I can remember. I could write a book about 3 to 4 star hotels of Ireland and the UK, you know. So I've seen an awful lot of this industry. But as I stand here right now, I don't know what it means to be a senior developer, you know, and that's something that you wouldn't say about other professions like law or medicine or whatever, where there would be a career progression and you could say where somebody should be after 10, 20, 30 years, what they should be doing and so on. So I don't know what it means to be a senior developer. You know, if there was a graduate coming into our industry, I'm not sure I could tell them. I'm not sure I could tell them what it would mean to be an architect. I'm not sure what it would mean to work as a manager. I don't even know what it is to have skill. You know, what does it mean these days to have skill as a software developer? How would you answer that question? How would you nail it down? Okay. And, you know, what are the important things that will give you job security for the next 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, if you're hideously young, you know, for the rest of your career, you know? Or am I wrong? Eamonn, if you want to finish it off.
Yeah, so I'm anxious about the time and people falling asleep. That's where my anxiety lives. I don't think you're totally wrong. We think quite alike, you and I. But I think it's a glass half full, glass half empty. I think it's just a point of perspective. So, like in my career, there's lots of stuff that I've never done. Okay, so like I've never worked with punch cards. I've never written more than 100 lines of assembly. You know, I've never worked directly with transistors. I've worked with hardware, but not like really, really old stuff. I almost took this off. I have written my own compiler, but it was for university, so it doesn't count. I haven't written my own compiler for industry. So there's lots of things that I haven't done, but then I just went and did other stuff. I just joined the train at a different stop, and I had loads of fun doing it, and I'm still learning every day, and I hope to continue learning for the rest of my career. You know, it doesn't bother me that I didn't do those other things. I don't feel like I've missed out. And the next generation shouldn't either. They'll not do things that I've done. You know, they'll maybe not write their own sorting algorithm. They'll maybe not know the inner workings of data structures and, you know, write things in C++ to do that sort of stuff. You know, they'll not have to solve linker errors because they're working with better compilers, with Rust, again, with better error messages and things like that there. They might not have to think about endianness if they're not working with hardware. So there's lots of things that they won't do, but they'll do other stuff. and it will be hard, and they'll have to think, and they'll have to plan, and they'll have to work with other people, and they're going to solve problems and build good products. But the innovation continues, the evolution of our industry continues. We are still quite a young industry, and we're also an incredibly rapidly changing industry. The kinds of things we build today compared to the things we built 20 years ago, massively different. So I think it's just natural. It doesn't worry me, and I don't feel bad for where I am or where I'm going. So that's it. Chill out, man.